I watch the horizon burn through scratched plasteel that was never meant to hold back the end of the world. The flames are beautiful in a way that makes my stomach turn. Great sheets of orange and red and white that pour across the northern sky like liquid light. They do not flicker or dance as normal fire does. They consume, they erase, they transform everything they touch into absence. My daughter Senna grips my hand with fingers that have grown cold despite the rising heat. She is 9 years old. She still believes in tomorrow. "Papa," she whispers, her voice barely audible above the sound of 20 million people breathing in a space meant to hold perhaps 50,000. "When do the ships take off?" I cannot answer her. The words stick in my throat like broken glass. Around us, faces press against every window of the grounded evacuation transport. Millions of them, stretching across the landing field in a sea of desperate hope that is about to drown. They watch the bombardment with expressions that have not yet processed what their eyes are seeing. Some still smile with the relief of people who believe they are saved. Some pray with the fervor of the faithful who think the Emperor's servants have come to deliver them. Some simply stare, their minds unable to reconcile the promise of rescue with the reality of fire falling from the heavens. I know what they do not yet understand. I learned it 17 minutes ago from a Navy officer whose face had collapsed into something beyond despair. He had been weeping when he found me in the crowd, his uniform stained with vomit and his hands shaking like leaves in a storm. The words he spoke changed everything. Changed the meaning of the ships that brought us here. Changed the purpose of the congregation zones. Changed the nature of the fire that now paints the northern sky. There was never meant to be an evacuation. The officer's voice still echoes in my skull. "Exterminatus," he had said, the word falling from his lips like a confession of murder. "Strategic necessity. The Tyrannid fleet. We cannot let them feed. The biomass. Your world has 23 billion souls. If the Hive fleet consumes you, it grows strong enough to take 12 more systems. 140 billion downstream. The equation is simple. The decision was made weeks ago." I had stared at him, certain I had misheard. Certain that no human being could stand before another and speak such words with sincerity. But his eyes held no deception, only the hollow grief of a man who had been ordered to facilitate genocide and lacked the courage to refuse. "The bombardment will sterilize the entire planet," he continued, his voice breaking. "Nothing can survive. Nothing will survive. I am so sorry. I am so terribly sorry." Then he had walked away into the crowd, and I have not seen him since. I wonder if he put his service pistol to his temple. I wonder if that kindness was available to him when it is not available to us. The air tastes of ash now, though the flames are still hundreds of kilometers away. Or perhaps it is just my imagination painting horror onto every sensation. My wife Merith stands beside me, one hand on Senna's shoulder, her face drained of color. She knows. I see it in the way her lips move in silent calculation, counting the distance between here and there, between now and burning. She is an architect. She understands space and time and how quickly fire travels when it falls from orbit. Through the transport windows, I watch the first lance strike hit the northern continent. The light is so bright, it leaves after images burned into my vision. When it fades, there is a crater where Harvest Moon City stood. 17 million people lived there. Lived. Past tense. Reduced to vapor and slag in the span of a heartbeat. The crowd begins to understand. The sound starts as a murmur, a confused questioning that ripples through millions of throats. Then it becomes something else. A roar, a wail, a noise that no human should ever have to make or hear. The transport rocks as bodies surge against it, pressing toward doors that will not open, toward ramps that will not descend, toward a salvation that was always a lie. I pull Senna close and press her face against my chest so she cannot see what is happening around us. She does not resist. She is a clever child. She has already begun to understand in the way children understand things that adults try to hide. Her small body trembles against mine. "Papa," she says again, and this time the question is different. "Are we going to die?" The words should be impossible to speak to your child. They should catch fire in your mouth and burn away before they can wound. But I have no lies left that are kind enough to offer her. "Yes, little light," I whisper against her hair. "Yes, we are." Another lance strike. Another. The bombardment is systematic, following a grid pattern that speaks of careful planning and precise execution. They are not simply destroying our world. They are sterilizing it, erasing it, ensuring that when the Tyranid fleet arrives, they will find only a ball of cooling rock with nothing left to consume. I think of the wheat fields I have spent 30 years maintaining, the golden grain that fed 17 systems, the children who played in the irrigation canals on summer evenings, the bread that came fresh from communal ovens every morning, the small, beautiful, ordinary moments that made Hadrian's Garden a place worth living. All of it burning now, all of it becoming ash. The bombardment moves south. I can track its progress by the new stars being born on the horizon. 6 hours, I calculate. Perhaps 7 if we are unlucky enough to be on the edge of the pattern. 6 hours until the fire reaches the southern hemisphere, where we stand packed like livestock awaiting slaughter. 6 hours to watch the end of everything we have ever known. Senna's grip on my hand tightens. Merith's breath catches in her throat. Around us, millions of voices rise in prayer and accusation and animal terror, and the sky continues to burn with the cold efficiency of strategic necessity. But that is not where this story begins. Memory pulls me backward through time like a drowning man pulled beneath dark water, and I find myself standing 3 days earlier in a world that still knew peace. My name is Callus Men. I am 47 years old. I have spent 30 years of my life maintaining the aquifer systems that made Hadrian's Garden bloom, and until 3 days ago, I believed that work mattered. I believed my life had purpose. I believed in tomorrow. The morning begins as 1,000 mornings before it have begun. I wake at the 5th hour to the sound of prayer bells ringing across the valley, their bronze voices calling the faithful to offer thanks for another day of life in the Emperor's service. Merith sleeps beside me, her breathing slow and steady, her hand resting on my chest in the unconscious trust of 30 years of marriage. Through the window of our HAB unit, I can see the first light of dawn touching the wheat fields that stretch to the horizon in waves of gold and amber. Hadrian's Garden is not a remarkable world. We produce no warriors for the Imperial Guard. We forge no weapons in continent-spanning manufactorums. We are not a fortress world or a hive world or a shrine world that draws pilgrims from across the sector. We are simply farmers, ordinary people who grow grain that feeds 17 surrounding systems. Our value is measured in tonnage and distribution efficiency. Our contribution to the Imperium is bread. And yet there is beauty in that simplicity. There is dignity in useful work done well. I dress in the grey coveralls of my trade and walk through streets that are beginning to stir with morning life. The market squares fill with vendors setting out their goods beneath awnings that flutter in the gentle breeze. Fresh bread comes from the communal ovens, still warm, smelling of yeast and salt and the simple sustenance that has kept humanity alive since before we knew the stars. Children chase each other between the stalls, their laughter bright as bells, their faces unmarked by anything worse than scraped knees and minor grievances. The sky above is pale amber, filtered through an atmosphere that holds just enough moisture to grow things without drowning them. The sun is kind here. It warms without burning. It gives without demanding too much in return. I have traveled to other worlds in my youth, seen suns that scorch and suns that barely glow, and I know how fortunate we are to live beneath this gentle star. My work takes me to the Western Aquifer Control Station, where I have spent most of my adult life ensuring that water flows where it is needed. The machinery is old but well maintained, a legacy from the first settlers who terraformed this world 6,000 years ago. I know every pipe, every valve, every pressure gauge in the system. I know which seals need to be checked weekly and which can go a month between inspections. I know the sound the pumps make when they are running properly, and the slightly different sound they make when something is beginning to wear. This knowledge feels important. It feels like mastery of something worth mastering. At midday, I return home to find Merith preparing our meal, and Senna bent over her data slate, working through the mathematics lessons assigned by her Scholem instructor. She has her mother's dark hair and my grey eyes, and she is clever in ways that make my chest ache with pride. When she looks up and smiles at me, I see the future stretching forward in an unbroken line. She will grow. She will learn. She will perhaps become an engineer like her father, or an architect like her mother. She will marry and give us grandchildren who will chase each other through these same market squares beneath this same gentle sun. The thought is so certain in my mind that it feels like prophecy. We eat together at the small table in our living space, sharing bread and vegetable stew and the comfortable silence of people who have no need to fill every moment with words. Through the window, I can see the wheat fields swaying in the afternoon breeze, ready for harvest within the month. The grain will be processed and loaded onto bulk transports and carried to worlds where people depend on us for survival. We are part of something larger than ourselves. We are useful. We matter. That evening, as the sun sets and paints the sky in shades of copper and rose, the Vox speakers in every HAB unit crackle to life with an announcement from the planetary governor. His voice carries the practiced calm of someone trained to manage public concern without causing panic. "Citizens of Hadrian's Garden," he says, "I speak to you tonight with news that requires your attention but not your fear. Our astropaths have detected a Xenos fleet approaching our system. The threat has been classified as Tyrannid in origin. The Imperium has been notified, and naval assets are being repositioned for our defense. I ask that you continue your work and maintain faith in the Emperor's protection. There is no cause for alarm. The situation is being managed with appropriate concern for your safety." Around me, I hear neighbors gathering in the street, their voices low with worry but not panic. Tyrannids. The word carries weight, brings images from propaganda reels of alien horrors that devour worlds. But those are distant things, problems for other systems, other people. Here on Hadrian's Garden, we have walls and weapons. We have the Imperial Guard and the Emperor's blessing. We have faith that has sustained us for 6,000 years. Merith squeezes my hand. Senna looks up with concern but not fear. "Will the soldiers come?" she asks. "Yes," I tell her, and believe it. The Imperium will protect us. The Emperor protects. He always has. That night, I stand at the window and watch the stars. They are bright and clear and infinite, scattered across the darkness like promises. Somewhere among them, the Tyrannid fleet moves toward us with hunger that knows no satisfaction. But between them and us stands the might of mankind's empire. 10,000 years of military tradition and strategic genius and holy purpose. We are not alone. We are not abandoned. We are citizens of the Imperium, and the Imperium does not sacrifice its own. I believe this with the certainty of a man who has never known betrayal. I believe this for 3 more days. The certainty crumbles slowly, like earth eroding beneath steady rain. It does not collapse all at once, but falls away in small pieces that I notice only when I step forward and find nothing solid beneath my feet. The Imperial Guard arrives on the second day after the governor's announcement. Their transports descend through clouds that have begun to gather in strange formations, as if the sky itself senses something wrong. I stand with hundreds of others in the central square, watching the ships settle onto the landing fields with the thunder of engines that shake the ground beneath our feet. We have come to welcome our defenders, to see the heroes who will stand between us and the alien horror approaching from the void. But the men who emerge from the transports are not the gleaming warriors from propaganda reels. They are exhausted. Their uniforms are stained with dirt and something that might be blood, though I tell myself it is only rust from poorly maintained equipment. Their faces carry the hollow look of people who have seen too much and slept too little. And when they march past us, they do not meet our eyes. They move with the mechanical efficiency of men who have done this many times before and know exactly how it ends. I watch them begin constructing defensive positions, and the first cold thread of unease winds through my chest. The fortifications are wrong. They are building walls and gun emplacements around the spaceport, around the administrative centers, around the warehouses that hold our stored grain. But the residential districts receive nothing. The hospitals receive nothing. The skolums where our children learn receive nothing. When I point this out to Merith that evening, she frowns and suggests there must be a reason, some tactical consideration we do not understand. But her voice lacks conviction. The work continues through the night. I wake to the sound of drilling and the sharp crack of rockcrete being poured into forms. By morning, the spaceport is surrounded by walls 3 meters high, topped with razor wire that curves inward, as if designed to keep people in rather than out. Supply depots are being fortified with gun positions that face not toward the sky, where the Tyranids will come, but toward the city where we live. I need to know why. The question burns in my mind, like acid, eating through the comfortable assumptions that have structured my understanding of the world. So I make my way to the command post that has been established in the planetary governor's compound, past guards who watch me with expressions I cannot read, and I find a commissar standing outside a temporary command structure reviewing reports on a data slate. He is young, perhaps 30, with the black uniform and silver skull insignia of his office. His face is clean-shaven and unremarkable, but his eyes hold something I have seen before in the faces of men who work in the deep processing plants where livestock are transformed into protein rations, a kind of necessary distance from what they must witness. "Sir," I say, keeping my voice respectful, deferential. "I am Callus Men, irrigation engineer for the Western Sector. I wanted to inquire about evacuation protocols. My family and I would like to know what preparations we should make, what we should bring, where we should report when the time comes." The commissar looks up from his data slate. For a moment, his eyes focus on me, and I see something flicker across his face. Something that might be pity, or might be guilt, or might be the blank absence of feeling that comes when a man must do something too terrible to acknowledge. Then his expression goes completely neutral, as if a switch has been thrown behind his eyes. He stares at me for 3 long heartbeats, his face empty of everything human. Then he turns and walks away without saying a word. I stand there in the compound, listening to the sound of fortifications being built around buildings that house not people but supplies, and the cold thread of unease becomes a cord, becomes a rope, becomes something that wraps around my chest and begins to squeeze. The rumors begin that night. They spread through the city in whispers, passed from neighbor to neighbor like a contagion that thrives in darkness. People speak of other worlds in the Tyranid, Fleet's Path, Agricola Prime, which stopped transmitting 6 months ago. Harvest Moon Secondary, whose distress calls simply ended mid-sentence. Wheat Bearer, which sent one final message that consisted only of screaming before silence claimed them forever. No survivors were ever found. No explanation was ever given. The world simply vanished from Imperial records as if they had never been. But surely that was because the Tyranids consumed them, Merith says when I share what I have heard. Surely that is what happens when worlds fall to the hive fleets. Yes, I reply, though uncertainty has begun to poison every certainty I once held. Surely. The Imperial Navy presence in orbit increases dramatically over the following day. I can see the ships when darkness falls, moving across the stars like predators circling prey. There are more of them than I have ever seen in one place, their running lights bright enough to cast shadows on the ground below. This should comfort me. This should be proof that the Imperium takes our defense seriously, that we matter enough to warrant such protection. But then, Senna points at the sky and asks the question that breaks something fundamental in my understanding of the universe. "Papa," she says, her small finger tracing the shape of a destroyer that hangs above us like a metal god. "Why are the ship's guns pointing at us instead of at the stars?" I follow her gaze and see what my mind has been refusing to acknowledge. The orbital vessels are not arrayed for defense against an approaching threat. Their weapons are angled downward, their firing solutions calculated for targets on the planetary surface. They are not positioned to protect us from the Tyranids. They are positioned to fire upon us. My daughter looks up at me with eyes that still hold trust, still believe that her father can explain the things that frighten her and make them less terrible. She waits for my answer with the patience of a child who knows that adults always have reasons for the things they do, that the world makes sense if you can only find the right explanation. But I have no answer that will not shatter her. I have no words that can reconcile what we are seeing with what we have been told. So I pull her close and press her head against my chest, so she cannot see my face, cannot see the horror that I know is written there. "I do not know, little light," I whisper into her hair. "I do not know." Above us, the ships continue their patient circling, their guns pointed down at the world they came to defend. And in the city around us, more people begin to notice what we have noticed, begin to ask questions that receive no answers, begin to feel the first cold touch of understanding that something is terribly, fundamentally wrong. The Emperor protects, we have always been told. The Emperor protects. But as I stand beneath a sky full of weapons pointed at my home, I begin to wonder who he is protecting, and from what, and at what cost to those of us who still believe in his mercy. The answer to my unspoken question comes the following morning through Vox speakers that crackle to life in every hab unit, every market square, every street corner across our world. The planetary governor's voice fills the air with words that sound like salvation, but taste like ash on my tongue. "Citizens of Hadrian's Garden," he announces, his tone carrying the practiced warmth of a shepherd speaking to his flock. "The Tyranid threat approaches more swiftly than our initial projections indicated. For your safety and the efficient coordination of our defensive efforts, all citizens are hereby ordered to report to their designated congregation zones within the next 12 hours. This is a mandatory evacuation protocol. Transportation and supplies will be provided. Bring only essential personal items. The Emperor protects, and through organized cooperation, we shall endure this trial together." I stand at our window and watch as millions begin to move. They flow through the streets like water seeking its level, carrying children and small bundles of possessions, their faces set with the determination of people who believe they are being saved. I see my neighbors filing past, the baker who makes Senna's favorite sweetbread, the elderly couple from 3 doors down who have lived here for 70 years. the young mother with twins who smile and wave at everyone they pass. They are obedient. They are faithful. They trust that the Imperium knows what is best for them. But I cannot move. Something holds me frozen at the window, watching the procession with a dread that has crystallized into certainty. I think of the Commissar's blank face. I think of the guns pointed down from orbit. I think of the defensive positions built to contain rather than protect. And I know, with a knowledge that bypasses reason and lives in the ancient animal part of my brain that has kept humanity alive since before we knew fire, that this is wrong. "Callus," Merith says behind me, her voice uncertain. "We should prepare. The congregation zones." "No," I say, and the word comes out harder than I intend. "No, we are not going." She crosses to stand beside me, and together we watch the great migration of our people toward the landing fields and transport hubs that ring our city. From our elevated position, I can see the full scope of it. Not thousands, but millions, perhaps billions across the entire world, all moving in the same direction, all trusting in the same promise of protection. "Look at the guard positions," I say quietly, pointing to the fortifications that surround the nearest congregation zone. "Look at which way they face." Merith follows my gesture, and I feel her body stiffen as she sees what I have seen. The Imperial Guard has established checkpoints at every entrance to the congregation zones, but the heavy weapons emplacements face inward, not outward. The walls are designed to prevent egress, not ingress. The entire structure of their defensive posture is wrong, unless the thing they are defending against is the people themselves. Perhaps it is just to maintain order, Merith suggests, but her voice has gone hollow. To prevent panic. We watch in silence as guard units unload cargo from their transports. I expect to see food supplies, medical equipment, evacuation shelters. Instead, I see electroprods with power cells that can drop a man in convulsing agony. Riot shields stacked in neat rows. Canisters of neural gas designed for crowd dispersal. Not the tools of salvation. The tools of subjugation. A woman approaches one of the guardsmen at the nearest checkpoint. Even from this distance, I can see the eager hope in her posture, the way she gestures toward the sky, as if asking about the ships that will carry them to safety. The soldier she addresses goes rigid. His hand moves to his laser gun, and even across the space that separates us, I can see the tremor in his fingers. He shakes his head once, sharply, and the woman backs away from him, her hope beginning to curdle into confusion. "We are not going," I say again, and this time Merith does not argue. The decision crystallizes with terrible clarity. If we are wrong, if this is simply military procedure we do not understand, then we will be marked as disobedient and face whatever punishment the administratum decrees for those who refuse lawful orders. But if we are right, if the dread coiling in my chest is justified, then walking into those congregation zones is walking into death, and between the possibility of punishment and the certainty of extinction, the choice becomes simple. "The tunnels," I say. "The deep maintenance tunnels beneath the aquifer station. I know them better than anyone. We can hide there. We can survive there." "For how long?" Merith asks. I have no answer that provides comfort. We gather what we can carry. Food rations, water filtration tablets, blankets, a small emergency medical kit. Senna watches us with eyes too large for her face, understanding that something fundamental has changed even if she cannot name what it is. We move through the streets in the opposite direction from the Great Migration, staying to shadows and side passages, avoiding the main thoroughfares where guard patrols enforce compliance. The aquifer control station stands empty when we reach it. Everyone who worked here has already reported to the congregation zones, trusting in orders, believing in protection. The maintenance access hatch responds to my authorization codes, and we descend into darkness, lit only by emergency lumens that cast everything in shades of sickly green. The tunnels are vast, stretching for kilometers in all directions, carved from living rock when the first settlers terraformed this world. I have walked these passages for 30 years. I know every junction, every chamber, every place where water collects and machinery hums. We make our way to a deep pump room that has not been used in decades, sealing the access hatch behind us. And there, in the darkness beneath the world we love, I do something that marks us as criminals or survivors, depending on how history chooses to remember. I activate a Vox receiver I have salvaged from decommissioned equipment, tuning it to Imperial Guard frequencies that were never meant for civilian ears. Static fills the chamber, then voices, Guard commanders coordinating movements, naval officers confirming firing solutions, and beneath it all, growing steadily louder as more people reach the congregation zones and begin to understand, the sound of 20 billion human beings realizing they have been betrayed. The pleading starts first. Calm requests for information, reasonable questions about when the transports will arrive, then confusion as hours pass and no ships descend, then fear as the truth becomes undeniable, then screaming that echoes through the Vox system like the death cry of our entire species. Senna covers her ears, Merith closes her eyes, and I listen because someone must bear witness to what is happening. Someone must remember that we trusted and were betrayed, that we obeyed and were condemned, that we believed in protection and received only preparation for slaughter. Above us, our world waits for fire. Around us, billions gather in fields beneath an open sky. And in the cold depths where we hide, I hold my family close and pray to a God I am no longer certain listens to people like us. The Emperor protects, we have always said. But as the screaming grows louder through the stolen Vox, I begin to understand that protection has many meanings, and not all of them include our survival. The prayers do not last long. Hope dies more quickly than I expected, burned away by the simple mathematics of time passing without salvation. Through the Vox receiver, I hear the moment when confusion becomes understanding, when faith collides with reality and shatters into something unrecognizable. Then the Tyranid fleet arrives at the edge of our system, and everything that came before becomes prologue to horror beyond measure. The Vox crackles with tactical chatter as naval sensors detect the Xenos vessels emerging from the void. I hear the calm voices of ship officers confirming classifications, calculating trajectories, estimating arrival times at planetary orbit. The professional detachment in their tones suggests routine rather than crisis. They speak of the approaching swarm with the same inflection they might use to discuss supply requisitions or maintenance schedules. Contact confirmed, a naval commander reports. Tyranid bioships, classification Kraken variant, estimated fleet strength, 47 capital organisms, 312 escort forms, estimated time to engagement range, 14 hours. 14 hours. The number falls into my consciousness like a stone into dark water. 14 hours until the Hive fleet reaches us. 14 hours until we see whether the Imperial Navy's weapons are sufficient to turn back the swarm. But the response comes immediately, and it is not directed at the approaching Xenos. The first Lance strike hits Congregation Zone Alpha, where 17 million people have been gathered in an open field beneath the northern sky. The sound reaches us even through kilometers of rock and earth, a deep, concussive boom that makes the tunnel walls shudder and dust rain from the ceiling. Through the Vox, I hear the transmission cut to static mid-word as whoever was speaking simply ceases to exist. Then Zone Beta, then Gamma, then Delta, The strikes follow in rapid succession, systematic and thorough, following a predetermined firing pattern that speaks of careful planning and precise execution. This is not defensive fire gone astray. This is not collateral damage from orbital combat. This is deliberate extermination conducted with industrial efficiency. The screaming that fills the Vox channels is beyond anything I have words to describe. Millions of voices raised in confused terror, in desperate prayer, in accusations hurled at a god who has abandoned them, or an empire that has betrayed them, or both. The sound is too vast for the human mind to process. It becomes texture rather than meaning, a wall of anguish that obliterates individual suffering beneath the sheer weight of collective extinction. Through the maintenance grates above us, I hear the physical reality of what the Vox only hints at. The sound of fire falling from heaven, the sound of atmosphere ionizing under the passage of lance beams, the sound of millions of human beings dying at once, their voices merging into a noise that should not exist in any universe ruled by a benevolent creator. Senna covers her ears and presses her face against Merith's chest, her small body racked with sobs that shake her like a fever. Merith holds her but does not speak, does not move except for the mechanical action of breathing. Her eyes have gone somewhere distant, somewhere beyond the horror of this moment, retreating into whatever space the mind creates when reality becomes unbearable. I cannot look away from the Vox receiver. I cannot stop listening. Someone must bear witness. Someone must remember that this happened, that 23 billion people did not simply vanish, but were murdered with purpose and planning by the very empire they served. The transmissions that filter through the static are fragments of the apocalypse. A priest's voice, hoarse from preaching, raised not in prayer but in curse. Damn you, emperor of lies! Damn you and your false protection! We believed, we served, we died for you, and you reward us with fire. A guardsman weeping, his words slurred with desperation. Forgive me, forgive me. I did not know. They did not tell us. I am so sorry. I am so terribly sorry. A woman singing, her voice clear and steady despite the chaos around, her, leading others in an ancient hymn that predates the Imperium by millennia. The song speaks of harvest and home, and the eternal cycle of planting and reaping. It speaks of life continuing beyond death, of seeds falling into dark earth and rising again in spring. The voices join hers, hundreds, then thousands, then millions, all singing together as the fire consumes them. The hymn cuts off mid-verse, replaced by silence more terrible than any scream. And through it all, the naval officers maintain their calm, tactical chatter. Zone Alpha sterilized, proceeding to Zone Beta, firing solution confirmed, plasma torpedoes away. They are not attacking in rage or fear. They are not defending against an imminent threat. They are executing a plan, following orders, conducting an operation that was designed weeks or months ago by strategists who calculated the acceptable cost of survival and determined that our entire world fell on the wrong side of the equation. The understanding comes, slowly, assembled from fragments of overheard transmissions and the pattern of destruction I can track through reports. The Imperium is not defending Hadrian's garden. It is destroying it. Every congregation zone, every city, every population center is being systematically targeted and obliterated. The orbital bombardment is not aimed at military targets or defensive installations. It is aimed at us, at the biomass, at the 23 billion human bodies that the Tyrannid Hive fleet has traveled light years to consume. We are being turned to ash so that when the Xenos arrive, they will find nothing to feed upon. Our deaths are not tragedy or collateral damage. They are strategy. The Imperium is weaponizing our extinction, transforming our world into a trap baited with our own corpses. By the time the Tyrannids reach Hadrian's garden, There will be nothing left for them to harvest. They will find only a ball of scorched rock and starving. They will move on to the next system weakened, rather than strengthened. The mathematics are elegant. Sacrifice 23 billion to deny the hive fleet the biomass it needs to consume the next 12 systems. Let one world die to save 140 billion downstream. The equation is simple. The logic is flawless. And it condemns every soul on Hadrian's Garden to death, not in battle, but in calculated genocide dressed in the language of strategic necessity. My world is not being defended, it is being sterilized. And we, the faithful citizens who grew the grain that fed 17 systems, who prayed every morning to the Emperor's glory, who believed in protection and purpose and the righteousness of the Imperium's cause, are simply biomass that must be denied to the enemy. Above us, the bombardment continues. Zone after zone falls silent on the Vox. City after city becomes crater and ash. And in the darkness of our hiding place, we understand that survival means only that we die later rather than sooner. That we have bought ourselves hours or days before the fire reaches deep enough to find us. Senna has stopped crying. She lies still in Merith's arms, her eyes open but unseeing, her mind retreating into whatever mercy children find when the world reveals itself to be crueler than their innocence can comprehend. Merith rocks her slowly, mechanically, humming the lullaby she sang when Senna was an infant. The sound is small and broken and utterly futile against the magnitude of what is happening above us. And I listen to our species destroying itself to survive. And I wonder if survival purchased at such cost can truly be called victory. The question finds no answer in the darkness, but another voice does. It comes from the tunnel entrance behind us, weak and wet with the sound of lungs filling with blood. Because survival is the only victory that matters, the voice says. And sometimes survival requires becoming the very thing we claim to fight against. I turn to see a woman collapsed in the doorway, her black body glove marked with the stylized eye of the Inquisition. She is young, perhaps 30, with pale skin and dark hair matted with blood from a wound in her abdomen. One hand presses against the injury, but crimson seeps between her fingers with each labored breath. The other hand clutches a data slate against her chest, as if it contains something more precious than her own fading life. "You are hiding," she says, dragging herself further into the chamber with determination that speaks of training and augmentation, fighting against flesh that is ready to surrender. Smart. Faithful obedience would have killed you hours ago. I respect pragmatism. Merith pulls Senna behind her, placing herself between our daughter and this stranger who brings the Inquisition's authority into our refuge. But the woman laughs, a bitter sound that turns into coughing that produces more blood. "Peace, citizen. I am not here to enforce compliance. I am here to die somewhere that is not in full view of the men I gave orders to. Even servants of the throne prefer some dignity in their final moments." She reaches the wall and leans against it, her face grey beneath the emergency lumen's sickly glow. I can see the extent of her injuries now. The wound in her abdomen is catastrophic, the kind that kills slowly and painfully. She has minutes, perhaps, or hours if her augmentations are sophisticated enough to delay the inevitable. "You want to know why?" she says, her eyes fixing on mine with terrible clarity. "I can see it in your face. You want to understand how the Imperium you served could do this to you. You want it to make sense." "Yes," I say, because there is no point in pretending otherwise. "Then I will give you what you want. Truth. The cold, perfect, terrible truth." She coughs again, wiping blood from her lips with the back of her hand. "The Imperium knew this world could not be defended. The Tyrannid fleet approaching your system is a Kraken splinter, fleet containing 47 capital organisms. Our combat simulations were comprehensive. We ran 3,000 variations using every available tactical parameter. Every single projection ended the same way. Hadrian's Garden falls. The Hive fleet consumes 23 billion human bodies. The biomass fuels their reproduction. The fleet grows strong enough to overwhelm the next 12 systems in its path. She pauses, her breathing labored, gathering strength to continue. Agricola Sector, Harvest Moon Tertiary, Breadbasket Prime, Wheat Bearer, Golden Field, 7 others whose names do not matter. 140 billion souls living on those worlds. Good, faithful citizens like yourselves. Families, children, innocents who deserve protection. So you protect them by murdering us? The words tear from my throat like broken glass. No, she replies with exhausting patience. We protect them by denying the Tyranids what they came to harvest. The Munitorum calculated a simple equation. Sacrifice 23 billion to save 140 billion. Let one world die so that 12 worlds might live. The mathematics are elegant. The strategy is sound. Your death served the Imperium, and there is no greater purpose than that. Her eyes hold no cruelty, no malice, no sadistic pleasure in the suffering she has helped orchestrate. Only a profound weariness, the exhaustion of someone who has made terrible decisions and understands exactly what they cost. She believes every word she speaks with the conviction of someone who has looked into the abyss of necessity and chosen to do what must be done, regardless of the price. Here, she says, extending the data slate toward me with a trembling hand. Take it. Read for yourself. See the projections. See the casualty estimates. See how your deaths were weighed against the lives you will save. Perhaps it will help you understand that this is not cruelty. It is arithmetic. I take the slate from her, its surface slick with her blood. The woman slumps against the wall, her strength finally failing, her augmentations no longer sufficient to keep consciousness from flickering. She watches me through half-closed eyes as I activate the device and begin to read. The document is comprehensive. Tactical assessments from Fleet Command, strategic projections from the Munitorum, casualty estimates refined through probability algorithms, biomass consumption calculations based on observed Tyranid feeding patterns, resource allocation recommendations, evacuation feasibility studies that conclude with clinical precision that no sufficient transport exists to move 23 billion people in the time available. The final recommendation is marked with the highest level of inquisitorial approval. Initiate Exterminatus Protocol Omega-7, complete planetary sterilization. Deny enemy biomass acquisition. Acceptable losses, total. Strategic value, optimal. Acceptable losses, total. The words burn themselves into my mind with acid clarity. We are not casualties of war. We are not martyrs sacrificing ourselves for a noble cause. We are acceptable losses in a calculation that determined our deaths were more valuable than our lives. Hadrian's Garden was not chosen for extermination because it could not be saved. It was chosen because sacrificing it was the most efficient solution to a strategic problem. The mathematics are coldly beautiful. Each section builds upon the last with inexorable logic. The projections are detailed, the assumptions reasonable, the conclusions inevitable. If the Tyranids consume Hadrian's Garden, they grow strong enough to take 12 more systems. If Hadrian's Garden is sterilized before their arrival, the Hive fleet finds only ash and moves on weakened by starvation. The equation is simple. The cost is enormous, the logic is perfect, and it condemns 23 billion people to death not in glorious battle or heroic last stands, but in calculated genocide dressed in the language of strategic necessity. Do you understand now? The inquisitorial agent whispers, her voice barely audible. We are not monsters. We are servants of an empire that has survived for 10,000 years, precisely because we are willing to make these choices. Your world dies so that humanity endures. Your suffering purchases survival. That is the bargain. That is the price. That has always been the price. She closes her eyes. Her breathing becomes shallow, irregular. Tell yourself that it matters. Tell yourself that your deaths serve a purpose. Perhaps it will make the burning easier to bear. Then she is gone, her final breath rattling out into the darkness of the tunnel. I stare at the data slate in my hands, at the perfect logic that has murdered my world, and I understand with terrible clarity that evil does not require cruelty or madness. Sometimes it requires only mathematics and the willingness to act upon their conclusions. The Imperium did not betray us in rage or error. It betrayed us with full knowledge and careful deliberation, sacrificing us with the same clinical efficiency that it files requisition forms and processes tax levies. We are not people to them. We are numbers in an equation, and the equation has determined that we must die. The answer dies with her, but the bombardment does not. It intensifies with methodical precision, moving from grid square to grid square in a pattern designed by strategists who understand exactly where people hide when they flee from death. The naval officers know this world as well as I do, perhaps better. They have maps that show every bunker, every shelter, every underground space that might harbor survivors. They are not simply destroying the surface. They are sterilizing the planet down to the bedrock, ensuring that nothing remains to feed the approaching swarm. The tunnel shudders around us. Dust and small fragments of rock rain from the ceiling as a plasma torpedo strikes somewhere above, its superheated plasma boring through layers of earth and stone like a drill bit through soft wood. The sound is apocalyptic, a deep, resonant groaning as if the planet itself cries out in agony. Cracks spiderweb across the walls, and I know with the certainty of 30 years working in these depths that this section will collapse soon. "We have to move," I say, pulling Senna to her feet. "Deeper. We need to go deeper." Meredith nods, her movements mechanical, her eyes still distant. But she follows, and that is enough. We leave the inquisitorial agent's body where it lies and flee into the labyrinth of tunnels I have walked for 3 decades. Behind us, I hear the groan of stressed support beams giving way, the crash of tons of rock falling into spaces that held air only moments before. We are not alone in the darkness. Others have had the same desperate instinct to hide, to flee from the congregation zones, to seek safety in the deep places of the Earth. I encounter them at junctions and in maintenance chambers, their faces pale in the failing emergency lighting, their eyes reflecting the same terror and confusion that I feel. Families huddle together. Individuals stand alone, separated from loved ones by the chaos of flight. Children cry. Adults whisper prayers that sound like curses. We are perhaps hundreds in these tunnels, survivors of a world that held 23 billion souls. The numbers are obscene. The mathematics of extinction render individual survival meaningless when measured against the magnitude of death above us. What does it matter that I live when everyone I have ever known beyond these few dozen faces is ash? What comfort is survival when it is purchased through the annihilation of everything that gave life meaning? The bombardment follows us. The Navy is systematic in its extermination. Plasma torpedoes burrow deep into the planet's crust, their warheads designed to penetrate hardened bunkers and military installations. They work equally well on aquifer systems and irrigation tunnels. I feel each impact through the soles of my feet, transmitted through kilometers of stone, each one closer than the last. Then the water begins to change. The aquifer that I have maintained for 30 years, that has provided life-giving moisture to wheat fields and homes and everything that made Hadrian's garden bloom, starts to heat. At first, it is subtle, a few degrees warmer than normal. Then it accelerates. The heat from the bombardment above, the superheated plasma turning the surface to slag, conducts downward through the planetary crust and into the water table below. The screaming starts in the lower tunnels, where people sought refuge near the water they thought would sustain them. Superheated steam explodes through ventilation shafts, scalding flesh from bone in seconds. The sound echoes through the tunnel network, bouncing off walls and carrying to every chamber, every junction, every place where survivors cower in darkness. It is the sound of people boiling alive in an oven that was meant to be their salvation. "This way," I gasp, pulling my family away from the screaming, deeper into the system where maintenance shafts connect to the geothermal plant built a kilometer beneath the surface. My legs burn with exertion. My lungs ache from breathing air that grows hotter with each passing minute. But I know these passages. I know which routes will hold longest, which structural supports are strongest, which way leads down when down is the only direction that offers any hope at all. We are perhaps 40 people when we reach the geothermal station, children and elderly and ordinary citizens who possess the luck or instinct to evade extermination. The chamber is vast, carved from living rock during the first terraforming, lined with machinery that has run for 6,000 years, converting the planet's core heat into usable energy. Emergency lumens flicker and fail, casting us into darkness before struggling back to a dim glow that transforms every face into a mask of shadow and fear. In that failing light, I see who we are. A mother clutching twin infants, an elderly man whose augmetic leg has failed, forcing him to drag himself the last 100 meters, a teenage girl with blood on her hands from helping others through collapsed sections, a priest whose faith has broken, who rocks back and forth muttering not prayers but accusations. We are the remnant, the survivors, the acceptable losses who refuse to be acceptable. The stolen Vox receiver still functions, though the signal is weak, so deep beneath the surface. I activate it with trembling hands and listen to the voices coordinating our annihilation. Grid section, Theta 7 sterilized, proceeding to Theta 8. Plasma torpedo penetration depth, 1.3 kilometers. Estimated remaining survivor pockets, 42. Biomass neutralization completion, 97.4%. They speak of us as logistics, as targets to be eliminated, as biomass that must be neutralized. The clinical language transforms horror into administrative procedure, turns genocide into grid completion percentages. Somewhere in orbit, officers plot trajectories and calculate yield patterns, ensuring that every cubic meter of our world is touched by fire sufficient to sterilize it completely. I think of the wheat fields burning, of the market squares where children played becoming craters of molten glass, of the HAB units where families lived and loved and hoped reduced to molecular vapor. Everything that was beautiful about Hadrian's garden is being systematically erased, transformed from life into ash, from home into weapon, from world into strategic denial of resources to the enemy. And we, huddled in darkness a kilometer beneath the dying surface, can only listen as the math completes itself. 97.4%. The number rises as we listen. 97.7, 98.1. Each 0.1% represents millions of lives ended, millions of futures erased, millions of small human stories concluded with plasma fire from orbit. Senna has stopped crying. She sits curled against Merith, her eyes open but unseeing, her mind retreating into whatever mercy the young find when reality exceeds their capacity to comprehend it. Merith holds her, but does not speak. Around us, the other survivors settle into whatever spaces they can find, conserving energy, conserving hope, conserving the last fragments of humanity in a world being purged of everything human. The bombardment continues above us. The heat continues to build. The Vox continues its clinical reporting of our extinction. And in the darkness of our final refuge, I understand that faith is not lost in a single moment, but eroded gradually, worn away by each new revelation of how little we matter to the institutions we served. The Emperor protects. I was taught. But sitting in darkness while my world burns, I understand that protection has a price, and sometimes that price is paid by those who believed themselves protected. We are the currency of survival, and the Imperium has spent us without hesitation. The deep chamber holds longer than I expect. Days pass in darkness, measured only by the chronometer on my wrist and the rhythm of breathing that marks us as still alive. Then, weeks. The bombardment never truly stops, though its intensity varies as the naval flotilla above adjusts firing patterns and recharges weapons. Each impact sends tremors through the rock surrounding us, a constant reminder that death is patient and methodical, and will eventually reach even this depth. Our supplies dwindle with the mathematical certainty I once applied to irrigation schedules and water distribution. The food we carried lasts 5 days. The water filtration tablets stretch to 9. After that, we subsist on what little moisture condenses on the chamber walls and whatever can be salvaged from emergency ration packs stored in maintenance lockers that have not been opened in decades. The elderly die first, their bodies unable to sustain themselves on so little. Then the injured. We move their bodies to a far corner of the chamber and cover them with blankets, creating a memorial that no one will ever see. But we do not surrender to despair entirely. Something in the human spirit refuses extinction, even when extinction is inevitable. We cling to the small dignities that define us as more than animals waiting for death. We share what little we have. We comfort children who cry in the darkness. We tell stories and teach lessons, and maintain the rituals of civilization, even as civilization burns above our heads. I teach Senna mathematics using stones arranged on the chamber floor, the same lessons my father taught me in the lower hive where I was born. She learns addition and subtraction by moving pebbles from one pile to another, learns multiplication by arranging them in rows and columns, learns division by separating them into equal groups. The knowledge will die with her, but in this moment, it matters that she understands how numbers work, that her mind remains engaged with something beyond fear and hunger, and the certainty of approaching death. Merith leads prayers, though the words feel hollow in her mouth. She recites the liturgies we were taught as children, speaks of the Emperor's protection and humanity's eternal glory, and the promise of reward for the faithful. But her voice carries no conviction. The prayers are simply sounds we make to fill silence, to maintain connection with something larger than ourselves, even when we no longer believe that something is listening. The others join her because the familiar words provide comfort, or at least distraction, and both are precious commodities in our final days. Through the stolen Vox receiver, I intercept transmissions that tell the story of our extinction from the perspective of those executing it. The voices are calm, professional, discussing grid completion and sterilization depth with the same tone they might use to discuss weather patterns or supply logistics. Then, on the 17th day, by my chronometer's count, the tone shifts. New excitement enters the clinical dialogue. Tyrannid fleet detected at system's edge. Bioship signatures confirmed. Estimated time to planetary orbit. 8 hours. 8 hours. The Hive fleet has arrived. The reason for our extermination has finally come to claim what it sought, only to find nothing remaining but ash and slag, and the fading heat signatures of a world being reduced to lifelessness. I listen with attention born of desperate need to understand whether our deaths have achieved their purpose, whether the mathematics that condemned us were at least accurate in their projections. The Xenos fleet reaches orbital range 6 hours later. The naval transmissions become tense, weapons systems activating, battle protocols engaging. But the engagement never comes. The Tyranid bioships circle our dying world, their sensor organisms probing the surface, searching for the biomass they traveled so far to harvest. They find only death. Sterilized continents, poisoned oceans, atmosphere burned away by plasma fire. There is nothing here to consume, nothing to convert into genetic material and spawn new generations of the swarm. After 2 hours of fruitless searching, the Hive fleet moves on. The Vox crackles with satisfied reports from Fleet Command. Enemy withdrawal confirmed, strategic denial successful. Hadrian's Garden system secured, mission parameters met with acceptable efficiency. The bombardment does not stop. I listen in numb horror as new orders are transmitted to the naval flotilla. The sterilization will continue for another 6 weeks to ensure complete eradication of all potential biomass. The world that was our home will be scoured down to bedrock, transformed into a monument to strategic necessity that no one will ever visit. Then, Hadrian's Garden will be officially struck from Imperial records, removed from star charts, erased from administrative databases as if 23 billion people never drew breath beneath its gentle sun. No monuments will be built to remember us. No heroes will be named. No prayers will be offered for the faithful who died trusting in protection that never came. We will become a tactical footnote in some classified report, a line item in casualty statistics too vast for individual grief. The wheat fields will not be remembered. The children who played in market squares will not be mourned. The ordinary happiness of ordinary lives will simply cease to have ever existed. This truth settles into my consciousness with the weight of stone. We are witnessing our own erasure from history. In dying, we also cease to have ever lived, our existence dismissed as inconvenient to the narrative of imperial triumph. The strategy worked exactly as planned. The Tyranids found nothing to feed upon. 12 worlds downstream will survive because we were transformed into ash. The mathematics were perfect. The cost was acceptable. And in being acceptable, it becomes forgettable. That night, if night has any meaning in constant darkness, we gather the children who remain and tell them stories of what Hadrian's Garden was before the sky fell. We speak of golden wheat swaying in gentle breezes, of bread fresh from communal ovens, of summer festivals where people danced in the streets and children laughed without fear. We describe the amber sun and the cool rain and the simple pleasures of lives lived in peace. The children listen with eyes too large in faces grown gaunt from hunger. They do not remember these things themselves, or their memories are already fading, replaced by darkness and fear and the sound of rock grinding against rock as the planet dies around us. But they listen, and in listening, they become witnesses to something that will die with them but existed nonetheless. We create memory even as memory itself dies. We bear witness to our own existence. We refuse the final indignity of vanishing without acknowledgement. If no one above will remember Hadrian's Garden, then we will remember it here in the darkness until darkness claims us too. It is a small defiance, perhaps a meaningless one, but it is all we have left, and so we cling to it with the desperation of the doomed seeking significance in oblivion. The defiance does not last as long as I hope. On the 43rd day, the bombardment finally reaches our depth. I feel it first as heat, subtle at first, then growing with terrible inevitability. The air in the geothermal chamber becomes warm, then hot, then scorching. The ancient machinery that has converted the planet's core heat into useful energy for 6,000 years begins to fail, its cooling systems overwhelmed by the fire being driven downward from above. The walls start to glow, not with the warm amber of our sun, but with the dull cherry red of metal approaching its melting point. The stone around us, compressed over millions of years into solid bedrock, begins to soften under temperatures never meant to exist at this depth. I watch cracks spread across the ceiling like veins of molten light, beautiful and terrible, heralding our final moments. There is no panic. We are too exhausted for panic, too depleted by hunger and thirst and the slow erosion of hope. The survivors who remain, perhaps 20 of the billions who once lived on this world, gather in the center of the chamber. We form a circle without discussion, drawn together by instinct older than the Imperium, older than humanity's journey to the stars. In our final moments, we seek the comfort of not dying alone. Senna presses against my chest, her small body trembling despite the rising heat. Merith's hand finds mine, her fingers interlacing with my own as they did on our wedding day 30 years ago. I hold them both and feel the weight of everything I am about to lose, everything that is about to be erased, as if it never existed. My daughter who will never grow to womanhood. My wife who will never see her hair turn grey. The future we imagined together, vanishing like morning dew beneath a sun too fierce to bear. Then someone begins to sing. Not an imperial hymn with its glorification of sacrifice and service, but an old folk song from before Hadrian's garden knew the Imperium existed. A song about planting and harvest, about seasons turning and life continuing in endless cycles, about the simple human joy of watching things grow. The voice is cracked with thirst and rough with smoke, but it carries the melody faithfully, each note falling into place like seeds into fertile soil. Others join. The priest who lost his faith finds it again in music older than his theology. The mother with twin infants sings through tears that evaporate in the superheated air before they can fall. The elderly man with the failed augmetic leg raises his voice with strength I did not know he possessed. One by one, we add our voices to the song, creating harmony in the darkness, asserting our humanity against the mathematics that deemed us expendable. We sing of harvests and children, and love that transcends death. We sing of bread fresh from the oven, and rain falling on thirsty earth, and the laughter of friends gathered around simple meals. We sing of everything beautiful that existed on our world, everything that will be forgotten but existed nonetheless. The song rises in the chamber, competing with the groan of failing machinery and the crack of stones surrendering to heat. And for these final moments, we are more than acceptable losses. We are human. We are witnessed. We are here. The air becomes difficult to breathe, each inhalation burning my lungs with fire that comes from within as well as without. I close my eyes and let memory wash over me one final time. I see the wheat fields on the day I first showed them to Senna, golden waves stretching to the horizon under an amber sun that will never rise again. I see her face the first time she laughed, 3 months old and perfect, her joy transforming our small hab unit into a cathedral of light. I see Merith's hand in mine on our wedding day, her eyes holding promises we believed would last forever. These images are mine to hold in my final moments. The Imperium can take our lives, can erase our world, can reduce us to ash and tactical footnotes, but it cannot take these memories, cannot diminish the reality that we lived, that we loved, that we mattered to each other even if we mattered to nothing else. In this small defiance, we reclaim ourselves from the empire that consumed us. The understanding comes as the walls begin to crack, as the first tongues of plasma fire breach the chamber from above. The Imperium was right. Our deaths did serve a purpose. The mathematics were accurate. The strategy worked. 12 worlds downstream will survive because we were sacrificed. 140 billion people will live because 23 billion died. The equation balanced perfectly, but that purpose was not noble or sacred or touched by the divine light of the Emperor's blessing. It was merely necessary, pragmatic, efficient. We died not as heroes in glorious battle, but as resources allocated and expended according to optimal strategic calculations. And in that truth lies a revelation more damning than any heresy. The Imperium will consume its own children to survive. No life is too precious to sacrifice. No world is too beloved to burn. Humanity's preservation requires the systematic dehumanization of those it claims to protect. We are not citizens. We are biomass to be managed, denied to the enemy when defense proves inefficient, transformed into ash when ash serves the greater strategic objective. This is the bargain at the heart of the Imperium's 10,000-year survival. This is the price of endurance in a galaxy that offers only extinction or compromise with extinction's methods. The plasma fire breaks through. The chamber fills with light brighter than our sun ever shone, hotter than the core of a star. I feel my flesh beginning to burn, feel Senna and Merith being torn from my grasp by forces beyond human comprehension. The song continues for a moment longer, voices raised even as bodies dissolve, defiant to the last breath. My final thought as consciousness fragments and flesh becomes vapor is simple and clear and carries more truth than any imperial doctrine ever taught. We were here. We lived. We loved. We mattered to each other. That must mean something, even if no one remembers. Even if memory itself burns, even if the universe remains indifferent to our passing. We were here, and then we are not, transformed from people into particles, from souls into statistics, from witnesses to silence. The last survivors of Hadrian's Garden become part of the ash that will be all that remains when the bombardment finally ceases, and our world joins the void as a monument to strategic necessity that no one will ever visit. 6 months pass. The universe continues its rotation with indifference to what has transpired on one small world in an unremarkable system on the edge of the Imperium's vast domain. Stars burn, worlds turn. The great wheel of existence grinds forward with the same mechanical precision that ground Hadrian's Garden into ash. An Administratum data drone enters the system on routine survey, its machine spirit following protocols established 10,000 years ago for cataloging Imperial assets and confirming strategic outcomes. It moves through the void with patient efficiency, its sensors scanning, measuring, recording data that will be filed in archives spanning light years and never read by human eyes. The planet that was Hadrian's Garden appears in its optical sensors as a sphere of cooling slag. The continents are glass, smooth and reflective, showing no trace of the wheat fields that once covered them in gold. The oceans are gone, boiled into vapor and lost to space when the atmosphere was burned away. The polar ice caps that regulated climate for 6,000 years of human habitation exist only as faint spectral signatures in orbital debris. The drone's sensors detect no life, no bacteria in the soil, no spores in the remaining trace atmosphere, no heat signatures suggesting survivors in deep bunkers, nothing that could feed a tyrannid hive fleet or pose a biological contamination risk to future colonization efforts. The sterilization is complete, thorough, meeting all specified parameters for Exterminatus Protocol Omega-7. Mission successful. The words appear in the drone's data log with the same formatting used for cargo manifest confirmations and maintenance schedule updates. The report is transmitted to the nearest Administratum relay station, encoded, compressed, filed in databases that stretch across the Imperium's vast bureaucratic infrastructure. It will be stored with trillions of other reports, accessed never, or perhaps once in a millennium, if some clerk requires confirmation of historical resource allocation. Hadrian's Garden is marked as sterilized. Its designation is updated to reflect its new status as unsuitable for habitation, dangerous for approach due to residual radiation, scheduled for eventual removal from active navigation charts. The administrative process takes 47 seconds. Then the drone moves on to survey the next system, its purpose complete, its mission accomplished without ceremony or reflection. 3 subsectors away, a battle unfolds that will be remembered in Imperial histories for centuries. The Tyrannid Hive fleet that sought biomass on Hadrian's Garden crashes into Bastion Primus, a fortress world bristling with defensive installations and garrisoned by 12 regiments of Imperial Guard. The defenders are strong, their ammunition stores full, their supply lines secure. Resources that would have been consumed defending doomed worlds remain available for this critical engagement. The battle rages for 93 days. Billions of Tyrannid organisms hurl themselves against plasteel walls and las fire. Millions of guardsmen die holding positions that must not fall. The sky becomes a graveyard of bioships and Imperial vessels locked in mutual destruction. But the fortress holds. The Hive fleet, weakened by starvation after finding only ash on the worlds it expected to consume, breaks against defenses it might have overwhelmed if fed with the biomass of 23 billion human bodies. Bastion Primus survives. The Tyrannid threat to the sector is contained. Strategic command marks the campaign as successful, notes the optimal resource allocation that made victory possible. Somewhere in classified reports, Hadrian's Garden appears as a single line acknowledging its sacrifice. The calculation was correct. The mathematics balanced. 1 world died so that 12 might live. 140 billion souls were saved by the extinction of 23 billion. This is called victory. But on the cooling corpse of Hadrian's Garden, no one remains to know this. No one survives to understand that their deaths achieved purpose, that their sacrifice was not wasted, that the terrible equation balanced exactly as projected. The knowledge dies with those it might have comforted, meaningless to the dead and unnecessary for the living who never knew their salvation was purchased with genocide. The planet's orbit begins to decay. Without an atmosphere to stabilize it, without the subtle gravitational effects of water and ice, the mathematical relationship between Hadrian's Garden and its sun shifts incrementally. Over decades, then centuries, the degradation accelerates. The world spirals slowly inward, pulled by gravity, toward the amber star that once warmed wheat fields and blessed children playing in market squares. In the 947th year after the extinction, Hadrian's Garden crosses the threshold of its sun's corona. The ball of slag that was once home to billions is consumed by nuclear fire, broken apart by tidal forces, transformed into a diffuse cloud of particles that will eventually be pulled into the star's core. Future astronomers will detect an anomaly in spectral readings, a brief spike in heavy elements suggesting a large body was recently consumed. They will note it in their records without curiosity or concern. Star charts updated in the millennia that follow show an asteroid belt where Hadrian's Garden once orbited. Navigation computers recalculate routes around the debris field. Perhaps a mining guild will eventually harvest the minerals, unaware they are sifting through the remains of a civilization. Perhaps the belt will simply drift, one more collection of rocks among billions, unremarkable and unmourned. This is the nature of sacrifice in the Imperium of man. Necessary, total, ultimately meaningless to those who bear its weight. The wheat fields will never return. The children will never sing again. The simple joys of ordinary lives lived in peace are erased as completely as if they never existed. Hadrian's Garden is gone, reduced to particles and memory, and eventually not even memory, just absence where something once was. And in the vast, indifferent mathematics of survival, this is called acceptable. This is called strategic necessity. This is called protection. The universe does not mourn. The stars continue burning. The Imperium processes its reports and updates its databases and moves forward with the mechanical efficiency that has sustained it for 10,000 years. No monuments are built. No prayers are offered. No one remembers the names of the dead, or the world that held them, or the beauty that existed before fire fell from heaven. But perhaps, in whatever realm consciousness goes when flesh is burned away and memory itself becomes ash, perhaps 23 billion souls still bear witness to their own existence. Perhaps they remember the wheat fields swaying in gentle breezes. Perhaps they remember the laughter of children and the warmth of love and the simple dignity of useful work done well. Perhaps they remember that they were here, that they lived, that they mattered to each other, even if they mattered to nothing else. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps in the remembering, even remembering that will itself eventually fade, there is meaning sufficient to justify existence. Perhaps the fact that something beautiful once was holds value, regardless of how completely it is erased. Or perhaps not. Perhaps their deaths were simply fuel consumed in the engine of survival. Perhaps their lives held no more significance than the wheat they grew, valuable only for what could be extracted and processed and distributed to serve greater purposes. Perhaps the universe truly is indifferent, and meaning is an illusion we construct to make bearable the reality that we are all expendable when the equations demand it. The silence offers no answer. The void does not speak. The emperor protects, the faithful are taught, but protection has many meanings, and not all of them include survival. Sometimes protection requires extinction. Sometimes love demands sacrifice. Sometimes the preservation of humanity necessitates the systematic destruction of the humans being preserved. This is the bargain. This is the price. This has always been the price. And in the darkness between stars, where Hadrian's garden once bloomed beneath an amber sun, there is only silence and ash, and the cold certainty that somewhere, somewhen, the calculation will be made again.